On today's episode, we have Erica Keswin stopping by. This is exactly where you need to come for credible life advice. You ask the questions, and we're going to answer them. So Erica Keswin. Erica is an expert in the business of relationships, and I'm going to highlight business here because you specifically talk about relationships in terms of business relationships and how your business can improve if you have good relationships with other people. She has worked for over 20 years in organizational and leadership development and in the human capital space. Erica was a consultant at the Hay Group and Booz Allen and Hamilton and worked as an executive director at Russell Reynolds Associates. She also served as executive coach at NYU Stern School of Business. Her forthcoming book, which comes out today, guys, is called Bring Your Human to Work: 10 Surefire Ways to Design a Workplace that is Good for People, Great for Business, and Just Might Change the World. Erica received an MBA from Kellogg and Northwestern University, and she's a pioneer in teamwork and collaboration, and her BA is from University of Vermont. Yeah. Burlington girl.
I head there tomorrow for a keynote.
Oh, that's amazing. Good for you. So Eric and I, as we were saying hi in the hallway, just realized we're from the same hometown. Which is, of course, you guys all know I'm a bit woo-woo. Like, I'm into the woo-woo situation, and here we are, all the alignment that added up for you to be here, and we're both from Fairfield on the day of your book launch. And we have Gretchen Rubin coming later on in today, and we are going to give your book to Gretchen, and there was like this odd connection between you and Gretchen Rubin that just happened over the last couple of days as well. So it's great. It's great. You're meant to be here. Mm-hmm. All right. So tell me about the inspiration. What inspired you to write this book? Like, how did you get into this? Human capital. I love the word human capital. I'm not an HR girl, right? I never worked in HR, but I love that word, human capital.
So I've spent 20 plus years working in the human capital space, helping companies improve their performance through people. So I've always been very curious about what makes people tick and how that's connected to business performance. But the inspiration, and you're gonna like this, behind the book, and the name of the book, Bring Your Human to Work, came from a pumpkin scone. Really? And the story is
from Starbucks?
Yeah, from Starbucks. Okay. I live on the Upper West Side. I've been there for 13 years, and I'd say pretty much every day since I moved there, I would stop at the Starbucks on 81st and Broadway.
No, well.
And I got to know my barista, Ashley Peterson. She would see me. This was before the app, so you have to walk in to order.
Right.
She would have my grande extra hot soy latte waiting for me, got to know my kids. My daughter, Caroline, about 6 years ago, started to have this obsession with pumpkin scones. And if you like pumpkin scones or pumpkin scone lattes, or pumpkin lattes, pumpkin spice lattes, they're only here during the fall.
Oh yeah, I did a story on Fox for them. Like, they're that popular that we had to do a story. Yeah, people wait. People were like, it's a big deal.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So my daughter soon realized that she loved this pumpkin scone, but by November 1st, you couldn't find them anymore. Yeah. So about 5 years ago, it was November 1st, we walked into Starbucks. No more pumpkin scones. Ashley gave me my coffee, and we continued walking to school. Next thing I know, Ashley, I hear someone screaming my name, running down Broadway. And I thought I had left my wallet at Starbucks. Yeah. Erica, and she's chasing me. She gets up to me and she said, hands Caroline, my daughter, a bag with a piece of gingerbread in it. And she said, I know we don't have the pumpkin scones, but now that it's November and we're getting into the Christmas season, here's a piece of gingerbread cake. I think you might like it. And as a person, as a human, but as a workplace strategist, here is a woman who got out from behind that counter, literally chased me down Broadway, and truly brought her human to work. And that moment, I said to myself, if Starbucks, or really if any company, could bottle what she just did, they could crack the code on any business.
Yes, you're so right. And actually, that story, I don't know why, made me tear up. I mean, I do. It's very tender, right? That somebody would do something like that. They would step out of their daily routine and just do a small act of kindness for somebody else. That they don't have to. She's not getting paid extra to do that.
100%. But it was because we had built this relationship over the years. I had invested in it. She had invested in it. And that's why the subtitle of the book is that it's good for us as people, it's good for the business, and it changes the world. And what I love about it, actually, the bad news for me is that Ashley is no longer at 81st and Broadway. The good news is that Starbucks also saw what I saw in her. She's been promoted 4 times.
Awesome. I was just going to ask.
She is now she is a manager of her own Starbucks.
Here in New York City.
Her very own store at the Uniqlo building on 55th and 5th.
Nice.
So
Shout
go
out
visit
to her.
Ashley Peterson.
Ashley. And she's managing it.
Go say hello. You can buy a coat and a coffee.
Right.
And see Ashley at Uniqlo. And she's doing unbelievably well, bringing her human to work and also training all of her other colleagues on how to do it. And that's what she brings.
Right. Here's a question, though. So you have some sort of, for lack of a better word, and I'm going to pull from a phrase from Gretchen Rubin because I've been kind of catching up on my Gretchen Rubin all weekend, commandments, right? You have some strategies, and there's 10 of them in the book?
Yes, correct. 10
strategies in the book, and the very first one is your most important takeaway, which is, your big takeaway is be real.
Be real.
Be real. I struggle with this. So tell me what you mean by being real, and I'll tell you what my struggle is.
Okay. No, I would love to hear it and see how I can help. So, as you said, the book has 10 chapters, and what I tell people is that they can pick and choose from a menu of options in the book. What resonates with them, their industry, their company, whether they're a big company, a small company, what their employees want. So they can pick and choose except for chapter 1. And chapter 1 is so important. It's called Be Real, How to Speak in an Authentic Voice. And it's about knowing your values and living them. And so the reason why I want to qualify that and almost pause for a second is that I was at a conference recently and I said, everybody raise your hand if your company has a set of values. Every single person in that room, hundreds of people, raised their hand.
Do they know the values, though?
Well, then I said to them, keep your hand up if you know them, if they're clear, if they are more than just platitudes on
a website,
on the website, on the desk. And excuse the pun, but I said to them, are they off the walls and into the halls? Can you feel them?
Please,
are they alive?
It's a great
and then
phrase.
Everybody. Then we ended up with about a third of the hands.
Right.
So that's the key in this chapter. Is it's not enough just to write them down. We have to know what they are and we have to live them.
Well, you talk a bit about sort of this idea of authenticity, right? So I can tell you where my mind went when I read this. I really struggle as you grow a brand, as anyone grows a brand, and I have a business and I run a couple different ventures. So I have a team now working under me. But as a personal brand, if I was left to my own devices to be real, I would be swearing on every single show. I would say a lot of things that were probably inappropriate, but I would find highly funny. It's hard to sort of, and I get it's a little different because if you end up becoming sort of a media personality, I bring it down, right? Because I can't be my full self all the time. There's a time and a place for different things.
You don't think you could?
I do bring it down, but I don't.
No. You don't think you could be your full self?
If I was my full self, I'd probably be running this out of my garage like Joe Rogan. And
Fairfield's a nice place. I'm sure you could get somebody to come and help you in Fairfield.
You know what I mean, though? I think that I just struggle with, but I think it's something worth thinking about. Right. And I think that's what your book did for me at that beginning right there was I've been thinking about it. You put language to it. What does it mean to be real at work? And also for me, and this is the big question I had for you, is you started this book project. So for people who haven't published a book before, they have to know that you write a proposal. It finally gets sold a few months later. The book doesn't come out for another 18 months.
Exactly.
In the last 18 months of this culture, of this world, of the United States, so much has changed in the work landscape in terms of how to behave with the Me Too movement. So I'm really curious to hear your thoughts because I think that conversation about being authentic really matters here because people are a little bit confused about how authentic they can be. What's appropriate behavior in the workplace? When we talk about gender equality and all the sexual harassment cases, I'm sure you're going to get called up a lot now to be like, can you help our company? Can you explain this to us? How do we go about navigating? I hope you do.
I hope I do too. And I love that question. And what I say to people is when in doubt, look at your values. So many CEOs today are being asked to weigh in on all different kinds of issues. CEOs talking about immigration, talking about shootings, so many things that aren't related necessarily to what they do as a business.
Right, as a person. And it's interesting you say that, because when we were growing up, you didn't know who really the CEOs were of companies, except like Jack Welch. Right?
Exactly.
That's all I knew.
Exactly. And now with technology and with social media, you have your company, you have your personal brand. So leaders, CEOs and all leaders are being asked to weigh in on so many other kinds of issues. So I recently heard the CEO of General Mills speak, and I bring this example up because it goes back to the diversity and inclusion and Me Too and some of these other things. And he said, Charlottesville happened, some things happened, and I was asked to speak out. And I agree with him in that you can't, as a leader, you can't speak out on everything. It almost dilutes the things that are really aligned with who you are as a person or who you are as a company. So he said, General Mills has been around for hundreds of years.
Yeah.
And diversity and inclusion has been a value of theirs since day one. So in Minnesota, where they're based, they were coming out with a law that was going to make gay marriage illegal. And that was something he knew he had to stand out. Like he had to stand up
and say,
I don't
believe that this should be illegal.
Correct. I don't believe that this should be illegal. What was interesting to me in his comments was that he knew that there would be protesters. He knew that there were going to be protesters protesting the protesters, which there were. So you're always going to upset somebody. But when you look back to your values, it's hard for people to argue, that you're speaking out on the wrong thing.
Mm-hmm. So what is your thoughts on the Me Too movement? Do you really, because the pushback I'm getting is that, and people are obsessed with talking to me about the Me Too movement and about women coming out about sexual harassment, not just in terms of what's happening with Kavanaugh this week, but on college campuses. And I've worked in rape crisis and in rape crisis centers with sexual assault my entire career. In private dinners with, I would say, very powerful people, one of the big questions I get is, do you think some of the pushback is going to be, we just won't have women on the team? Like it's too dicey of an area, and God forbid we're ever accused of anything. So the pushback might be that women aren't asked to sit at the table with them. And my heart sinks. Which also makes me go in the direction of, like, if you can't join a club, start your own. Well, which I'm trying to do.
I'll help
actively.
I'm in,
yes, I'm in that club.
Like,
stop knocking on a door that's not opening.
Right.
Is a phrase I really like. But I'd love to hear your thoughts on this.
Okay, great. So I think it's a fear of mine as well that people in companies are just going to say, let's not have women on the team, or if they are on the team, the rules will just be different because they don't want to be in the same room or go out to dinner. So my advice to leaders, the CEOs who know that they are getting pushback from their boards, that these companies need to be diverse. And the data is clear. A more diverse team is good for the bottom line.
And so again, not just gender, socioeconomic diversity, racial diversity of all kind. Yeah, all gender, sexuality, diversity. Yes,
100%. It is so much more.
True. It's so true. And if you've ever been in a work environment where there is diversity, it just ups everybody's game.
100%. So we know from a bottom line perspective that this is a better way to go. But right now we're in this situation where the rules are not clear. So the leaders need to come in and say, look, if you're not going to go out to dinner with a woman alone, then you can't go out to dinner with a man. And just say, that we have to look at this because it will end up hurting the careers of women if they're not going to be in meetings, if they're not going to be in social situations.
Right. Asked to do certain things, to travel, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, fine. If you don't want to do it and you feel uncomfortable, okay, I can agree or disagree with that, but you got to make it consistent.
Interesting. Tell us a little bit about the Spaghetti Project.
Great. So as I was doing research for this book, I came across a very interesting study out of Cornell University that was done by a professor named Kevin Niffen. And Kevin's father was a firefighter, so he grew up in firehouses, and those were his people. That's how he grew up. And he was getting advanced degree in organizational psychology and needed to study teams and team performance. So it was logical that he chose the firefighters. And what he found was that the firefighters who are the most dedicated to the long-standing tradition of the firehouse meal, sitting around the table, building trust, with their colleagues, it correlated with higher performance, and those firefighters saved more lives. And as a workplace strategist, it's something I knew and felt intuitively. And this study, and now there's more of them, the science to back it up really was this goosebump moment for me. So I began talking to firefighters, having interviews, visiting firehouses, and I'm sure you've seen television shows, Chicago Fire.
No, I have a brother who's a firefighter,
right.
and
So
it's creating the brotherhood.
Right, creating the brotherhood, and this is right, and the sisterhood, and the team, and you would know this because your brother's one. That the go-to, the stereotypical meal at a firehouse is often spaghetti and meatballs. And so I decided to call my work the Spaghetti Project because it's a platform that shares the science and stories of connection at work.
Okay, so question for you then. I hear so often, I had in my office when I was still practicing as a psychotherapist here on Fifth Avenue for over a decade. Many stories, people were in therapy because of abusive bosses or of a terrible culture at work. And again, I'm filming out of New York City, so you have to kind of understand that we have not just every industry, but a lot of type A's running around. And it was, I think, 10 years ago, obviously, again, we can go back into the Me Too movement and sort of social changes that we've seen. Millennials, thank God. I love millennials.
Me
I think
too.
they really disrupted the workplace for everybody involved.
For the better.
For the better. Absolutely for the better. So I'm not a millennial basher. I've always been a huge millennial supporter. But you've seen a lot of abuse. Do you really think it's possible to change work cultures?
I do.
You do? Have you seen it? Have you actually seen, though, that I've walked into some businesses and done some consulting where I'm like, oh my gosh, This is
I do believe culture can change. It's not rocket science, but it's really hard. And it takes a lot of discipline and a lot of intention and a lot of alignment. And so, earlier you asked me about that first chapter. I think if you don't know your values and who you are, it will never happen, because the companies that do it the best truly know where they're starting, and only then can you align all the rest of your programs, who you hire, who you want to go into business with, to those values.
Do you find that so much of the work culture and tone is set by the people at the top?
Well, what's great, yes. I mean, if you are not truly walking the walk in terms of, if you want people to take vacation and not burn out, and no leaders ever take any time off, it's not going to happen. So yes, from a top-down perspective, it starts there. What I love about this moment in time is that the millennials, who, as you know, will represent 75% of the workforce by 2025, they want a different workplace. They're demanding it. And because there's so many of them, the companies have to wake up and listen, or they cannot retain their top people. So it's both. It's this amazing sort of convergence of top down, bottom up, which gives me hope that we can begin to move the needle on a more human, non-toxic culture.
So by the time our kids come through that work pipeline,
I hope so,
it'll be better. Okay, so that leads me to another question that I have for you. There's been sort of some studies that suggest out there now that people are moving back into working from an office, that it's more effective to actually go into the office, where sort of the millennial generation was on the cutting edge, Gen Xers too, of saying, hey, can we start working virtually? Right, as the internet developed, and email and video conferencing, and then millennials sort of took that over. And now a lot of companies are actually saying, too much, let's get back into the office and sort of work together. How do you feel about that?
Like anything, I believe in moderation, and I describe it in the book as there's a chapter called Finding the Sweet Spot. We need to find the sweet spot between leveraging all that is so great about technology. And, I love technology, and it enables us to connect with people all over the world. We're using technology today to get our messages out to hundreds and thousands of people that wouldn't have gotten it otherwise. However, we also need to put that technology in its place and connect face to face. So, perhaps we could have done this interview over the phone, or I've done a bunch of podcasts
on Skype,
this
on
week
Zoom.
on Skype.
Yeah.
But the fact, I already know this, the fact that we met and talked for 15 minutes before this started, not only did we find out how much we had in common, this conversation is so much deeper and more rich because of this personal connection. And I know we are going to keep in touch, you know, forever
totally.
from this.
Yeah, I didn't want to continue. I said wasn't going to continue with the podcast.
Right.
Because I can't, I'm a psychotherapist by training and a journalist. So I need this.
Exactly.
I need to read facial expressions. I needed to have this platform video.
Right. But what's happening to you and all of us when we have this face-to-face is that our bodies are reacting in a physiological way. Our oxytocin, which is our feel-good hormone, is through the roof, which is like the firefighters, you know, what was happening when they were sitting around that table. And our stress is going down. And so it's good for us. So back to your question, you know, companies need to figure out how to find that sweet spot and how to curate connection. Millennials want flexibility in how they work, so they don't want to have to be in an office 24/7 or you know 8 hours a day. But it is important that they be there for all of us too, because it is directly correlated to the bottom lines of our business. So one little example anecdote in the book is from a very cool company called Food 52. They're based here in New York City, and they have in their handbook. So talk about being transparent when a person looks at their company to go work there. They say, look, we know you want flexibility. We know one day, and literally they write this, you might have to help move Aunt Bessie's piano. We want you to be able to do that during the week. But if you can, try to do it on work from home Wednesdays. And the idea is, we know it might have to be a Thursday, but if everybody can do their, you know, housework or their errands or their doctor's appointments or whatever it is, you know, on Wednesday, then the other days when you come in, you are much more likely to bump into people. And we know that when you bump into people at the water cooler, creativity happens, innovation happens, this oxytocin rush is happening, and we all feel more connected as people, and it's good for our business.
Right. Have you read, though, any studies when you were researching the book that suggested that people don't get as much done when they do work from home? I mean, I know balance is important, so this is not probably a good question because I hate either or questions, yes or no. But I have found managing people that we're much more productive when we're in the office. And I hate to say that because I've built my whole life on wanting flexibility.
Well, it depends on how you define productivity.
Right.
There are as many studies that say the opposite, that you actually get more done when you're not in the office. So it depends on what does getting stuff done mean. I could go through a day and send and receive 700 emails. I may feel productive, but did I get a lot done? It depends on what my goals were. Did I move my business forward? Probably not in certain ways, because it's hard to move your business forward without people and connecting with them.
Right, and actually business development.
Right, exactly.
Right. So let's bring on to another thing, you know, another commandment that you have in the book, which is, I love this one, less meetings. So it sounds counterintuitive to what you just said, which is about connecting. But one thing that shocked me when I made the career transition from my private practice back into the workforce was this idea of all these meetings. Everyone wanted a meeting. And I would sit in these meetings, and the worst thing is, and I'm going to just be totally radically transparent here, the mansplaining that happened in the meetings. I was like, oh, why?
Right.
Why? Like, I got that 2 weeks ago, you know, and I didn't, it was so weird for me to be in that environment for a while until I started running my own meetings, which was, how do you negotiate these sort of politics in the meeting room? Mm-hmm. And what I liked about your book is you sort of set some guidelines to that, right? Put your phone in the middle of the table, be nice, make the meeting have an agenda, have like a specific goal set. There's a certain protocol, a certain, what did you say it was? It's like
I frame it in three ways. So the first is, let's first address this idea of too many meetings.
Yeah.
So I break it down into purpose,
Crazy.
presence, and protocols.
Yes.
So look at all the meetings you had in a week. Did each one have a purpose? You know how many meetings that go on in companies just because of inertia? We've always had the 11 a.m. status meeting. Well, do we have anything to talk about at the 11 a.m. status meeting? But no,
I didn't understand this. This was foreign to me.
Right,
Yeah.
right. So do your own assessment. You know, for those of you listening, whether you're the meeting leader and you're organizing the meetings, or whether you're the person who attends the meeting, what is the agenda? Does it need to happen, and do you need to be there? That alone will cut your meetings down by, you know, a good 20%. The second part is presence. And we know that being physically present and being mentally or psychologically present are two very different things, especially because of technology. And we've all been in meetings where we're sitting around the table and then someone asks you a question and you say, wait, what? And everybody knows that you were multitasking or texting under the table. That's bad for many reasons. One, it hurts relationships. I mean, you're talking about something important. I'm, not listening, number one. Number two, it's not productive because now we have to repeat what was said. And the last piece is that it reduces the substance of the conversation. There's a study that's called the iPhone effect. And what the iPhone effect study found...
Oh God, I'm like, my stomach's churning listening to this already because I'm worried. Of course, with my children, right? We all worry we're on our devices too much. But go ahead, tell me what the iPhone...
the study found that, if you and I are out for coffee or if we're in a meeting, even if the phone is upside down, it reduces the substance of the conversation. So having it there in these meetings... So
don't even put it on the phone upside down. Have it away.
Right. So the first...
Because I always put it on the phone, but it's away.
Right. So the first round of this study, they looked at if your phone was upside down. The second time they did the study, even if it was in your peripheral vision, it was having the same negative implications.
Wow.
So the third round, the most recent round of the study, said it needs to be in another room altogether if you don't want it to impact your relationships, your productivity, and the depth of the conversations. I mean, it makes sense. If you and I are out for coffee, and I talk about this in the book. I mean, I have a friend where, we would go for coffee and...
Why bother?
And it's why bother, but it makes you only talk about very transactional things that lack substance because I don't want to get into something really deep and meaningful and even scary when I know that he or she's just going to reach for her phone.
Yeah. It's terrible, right? And not having it in your purse isn't good enough either.
Well, I do think there are workarounds, and this is not, I know. You have to be flexible, and we all have issues, whether it's a boss that needs to reach you or young kids, whatever it is. And, I'm dealing right now with some significant elder care issues. So we all have stuff, right? It's life. So then what I say is if we were out for coffee, I would say to you, look, I just want you to know I have a few things going on. I would have my phone in my purse, but I would tell those people who are dealing with some of these mission critical issues to call. They could have a special ring, which is a way to leverage,
like that tip.
Right? Let's leverage back to
a couple people just on the list where you hear that ring.
And that's a positive use of technology. So you're not mad at me if I say, oh my gosh, that's my daughter's teacher, she's not feeling well, or that's my boss, or that's my mother's doctor, which I was dealing with yesterday. We have to be strategic and intentional about, again, leveraging technology and putting technology in its place to strengthen our relationships.
Right. Well, and I'm a huge fan, if you guys who follow me know this, I'm a huge fan of always taking social media breaks. Like I have to. I don't, people who I think are on the scale of ADD also can have something called hypoproductivity. And I'm like that. I can sit down for a long period of time and concentrate for a very, very long period of time. Wow. So it's almost like the opposite of ADD. Like I could sit for 8 hours and not move.
I think you should teach a class on that because most people today cannot do that.
Yeah. I'm sorry. I think I said it wrong. I hyperfocus. I'm a hyperfocuser. But I also then can bounce into sort of having the ADD. I get bored otherwise. I like to have a lot of projects going on. I'm both analytical and creative. With that being said, I find that with especially swiping in Instagram, my mind, I cannot be creative. I cannot think straight. By the end of the day, if I'm on that phone and I'm swiping through the apps a lot to get stuff done, I'm a mess by the end of the night and I need to put it away. And sometimes just sleeping at night isn't enough. The best I have felt over the last year of my life when I decided to really take this into the next, kick this into the high gear was when I took a social media break for 2 weeks.
2 weeks. Wow.
2 weeks. I went dark. And people thought I had something tragic had happened.
Did you sign off? Did you say
I
to
didn't.
everybody on
I
your
didn't.
social?
It was sort of unintentional. It was sort of like a day led into another day, led into another day. And it was wonderful because you get other projects done because you're not spending that time on posting or doing what you need to do. And my mind, it felt lovely. It really did.
So the key now is to take that
find the
feeling
sweet spot, what you call the sweet spot.
Find that sweet spot. And it could be, some people say that they don't look at it for the first hour when they wake up. Some people say that they're going to batch process their emails and their social media and look at it 3 times a day. Whatever works for you. And you said this line earlier, but I often said it, which is left to our own devices, we're not connecting. And so we need, with ourselves and, with others. And so I think it comes down to creating those protocols for ourselves and cutting ourselves some slack. It's going to be hard, and not every day will be perfect. And you always have tomorrow to start all over.
So if you had one piece of life advice, considering the show is about life advice, if you had one piece of life advice that you would want to give your children, what would it be? We'll end on that note.
Relationships matter.
Relationships matter. I was listening to Oprah on one of her Super Soul Sunday podcasts recently, and she had this spiritual teacher on. I have to go back and find out his name because he doesn't have a book. He doesn't have anything. She just sort of found him through however Oprah finds amazing people to talk to. And she asked the question, does it matter what you do for a living? So many people feel like their happiness is related to the purpose, to doing purpose-driven work. And he actually said no.
I agree.
And she said, why? How do you even go about explaining that? And he said, the only reason why we work is to give ourselves an excuse to love in another place. And I'm paraphrasing here, but that it's about love. That no matter where we work, all it should be about is bringing love to the people who are around us. And I loved that concept.
Right. And
easier said than done, because if you're in a bad job that you hate and you're grinding it out, I'm a single mom with 3 kids. My heart goes out to a lot of women who have 2 or 3 jobs.
It's usually the bad manager. I mean, it's people tend to leave managers and not
leave the
companies
job or the job.
Se.
Yeah.
But that made me think of the story where you say to the janitor in a hospital, "What do you do for a living?" And he said, "I save lives." Which is true. And so it's connecting what you do to a larger, higher good. And for leaders who want to create a human workplace, that's the number one thing they have to do with their employees, help them make those connections.
So you're sitting here with a psychotherapist.
Uh-oh.
And everyone's always afraid to ask me a question. So you have me here for a hot second. I'm going to ask you to be a little bit vulnerable now. I do this with all of the guests. Do you have anything that you'd want to ask a psychotherapist right now while you have me? And I can tell you why we do this at the end. You said you're having an elder care issue.
Yes.
I am too. Mom's sick.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Me too.
Yeah.
In Connecticut, in Bridgeport.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I guess I would love your advice on, you are a single mom with 3 kids, lots of things going on, and it's really stressful. And I can always use someone's opinion on, especially, today is the day of my book launch.
I know, and you're telling me your mom was sick yesterday.
Yes, and so I could use all the help I could get.
This is what's so strange. I don't know about you, but until it starts happening, nobody talks to us and nobody prepares us for what it's going to be like to take care of or be around a sick or dying or aging parent. I was just texting on the train coming in today with a friend of mine whose father has moved in with him. I live with my mother, and she's very high functioning. She got my kids on the bus this morning, but she's got terminal leukemia.
Oh my gosh.
And we've been dealing with that for the last, year and a half. And she happened to be an oncology nurse for many years, and I'm a psychotherapist, so we talk really openly about death and dying with the kids, and we joke about it and we laugh and we pull out the cancer card all the time. And but it's what's amazing to me is, even in my field, we talk so little about it with each other. And so talking about connecting on a human level, I wish I had more people to sort of say, God, this can be stressful. Or that you're doing all this preparatory grief, right? You have all this anticipatory anxiety over an impending death. So there's weeks where I'm totally fine. And then this morning, out of nowhere, I heard the TV go on upstairs in the house, and I knew it was her turning on Good Morning America, which, shout out to Good Morning America, she watches every single day. And tears started streaming down my face. And I said to myself, how am I going to get through today if I'm feeling grief? If today is going to be a day where I'm going to let myself feel some grief, how am I going to get through it? And one of the ways I've done it is by just actually like having conversations with people and tears are rolling down my face. And I'll say, don't mind the tears. They're just going to be here. It's just my body reacting to the stress and to all the emotion.
Well, it goes back to be real.
And be real. Just, I have to be real. Like, I'm not going to shove this down. It won't be good for me. It won't be good for anybody around me. So, it's about talking about these issues like elder care that I don't know about you, but there's not a lot of people in my life who are going through it yet.
Yeah, we're just starting. There's the piece of what is coming, and it sounds like your mom is in a worse situation than my mom right now. It's the part of just getting through the web of all the insurance. I mean, there's not enough hours in the day.
No, it's a full-time job.
It is so that's what I'm in this. This is a full-time job, and I have to dedicate all this time to even find the right people who can help me with this new full-time job. And so I think, well, two things that I've just learned from you. One is I need to take my own advice and be real. So, and talk about it because it is part of my reality. One thing I did do yesterday, which again, it's just now I'm connecting all the dots as we speak because you asked this question, is I actually found the sweet spot yesterday because I have three sisters, and we had to get my mom from Fairfield to New York City. And I said to them, you know what? I need to be the one to take a step back today. I asked them...
Pass the baton.
I asked them to create a group chat without me on it so that I wouldn't get the texts.
Yes.
And I said, my sister...
You just had to focus. You had to be present.
Right. And I knew there were three other sisters
yes.
there.
Yeah.
So part of it's being real, but part of it is let's leverage technology. And I said to them, you need to leave me off. Call me. I set that protocol. Call me if there's an emergency, and of course I'm going to pick up that phone, but I don't need to get a text every minute. And it really changed how I experienced the day yesterday, and I asked them to do it again today.
Right. And I have to be honest with you, you're lucky you have sisters. I have brothers, and I can say here that my brothers have been incredible through this process. Even though I'm the one who cohabitates with my mom, my brothers step in all the time for me, so kudos to them. So they've been wonderful, but not everybody has that. And so often it's the women who are both, you're putting one kid on the bus and then the next minute you're worried about an elderly parent, and we get stretched in between. Plus we want to have these careers. So I don't necessarily know if there's any simple solution.
There's not, but I think about that all the time because when I talk to women's groups, which I am doing much more of lately, and talk about this idea of bringing your human to work, I'll say to them that you can't do it every day, but you need to walk down the hall. If you're going to take a 20-minute lunch break, you can't bring your lunch back to your office every single day and make doctor's appointments and do this other stuff. You need to pick a day or two to invest in your relationship with yourself. Give yourself a break. You can make the doctors, if there's an emergency, that's one thing. But we get into this mode where we come into our office and, the technology also sucks us in, and we get a hit of dopamine every time we send out an email.
Yeah,
but that will not move our career
That's
forward.
Biologically true.
Right.
That
is
proven.
chemical, and it's biologically.
Yeah.
So for women, be strategic, be intentional, look at your week and say, okay, on Tuesday and Friday, I am going to have lunch with a client one day, with colleagues one day. And with your colleagues, they know if it could only be 20 minutes. But again, if we're not intentional, and we have all of these other things going on, which women do, and even if we don't have an elderly parent that's sick or kids, we are caregivers by nature. We're taking care of our friends.
Oh yeah, everybody and everything and every detail.
But if we want these careers, we've got to bring our human to work, and we've got to be intentional about building relationships.
Yeah, and let go of perfection.
Oh
my God.
Yes, 100%.
This goes back to the very beginning of our conversation, which is keep it real, which is what we did. So whenever, it's so interesting, I can tell you this because you're into psychology, but whenever I flip it and say, do you want to ask me anything? Because people are self-conscious sometimes trying to be my friend for a variety of reasons, but one is because of what I've done for a living for so long. And when I flip it, all of a sudden the guest changes a little bit, and there's a vulnerability there, but your readers really get to know you then and see that you're human. So what we did there was model exactly what you're talking about in this gorgeous book that I'm so happy for you.
Thank you.
That another Fairfield girl did this and got published and put herself out there, and you're going to kill it. I just know you're going to kill it.
Thank you so much.
It's such a great space to be in. We needed something like this. So congratulations.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for listening to today's episode of Unscripted with Nell Daly. If you could right now, we need you to head on over and review us on iTunes. As always, we will personally reach out and thank each and every one of you who do so, but we'd love your reviews, so tell us what you think. And you can always send us emails with either guests you want on the show or comments or questions. We're happy to get those, and you can find those on the website, our contact information at nelldaly.com. To see all of my comings and goings, get updates on who our next guests are going to be, and if you just need a little bit of extra life advice or inspiration, come join me over on Instagram at Nell Daly. I use Instagram every single day. Or like us over on Facebook, and you'll automatically be following us, and that's at Nell Given Daily. That's also where you can watch us live. Before I end, I want to thank our audio editor, Walter Eggers, our video editor and co-producer, Paige McGovern, and our video production manager, Rick Endiver, co-producer, Corey Pakowski, and the rest of the Point Zero Media team. I couldn't do any of this without you. I couldn't. Of course, Teachable HQ, you guys rock. They're an amazing educational technology company. Check them out. I use them. Everybody big in the business uses them. They're just awesome. And a huge shout out of gratitude. Huge. The biggest to all the fans who are following the show. Just like I said last week, I am so humbled by how this is all going. Thank you. Until Monday, everybody, peace out. Have a fun and safe weekend. I love you guys already.